Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're taking a look at a few cards that came out in Rarity Collection. Now this set actually sets a very scary precedent for a lot of collectors. If we can get new high rarity printings of any card in the game now, it's almost like there's no point in investing in certain high rarity cards or staples. In fact, we've seen a lot of cards like Ultimate Rare Infinite Impermanence lose a huge chunk of their value leading up to and following the release of Rarity Collection. But of course, with these declines, there is also a lot of potential opportunity to be found within the cards in Rarity Collection itself. So today we're going to cover some of the price movements that we've seen already, and hopefully they will provide us with some guidance for what we should expect to see in the future. Let's get started. Kicking things off, I want to talk about Pot of Prosperity, but specifically here, I want to look at the lower rarity printings. Now, of course, Pot of Prosperity was one of the most hyped reprints to come in Rarity Collection in the first place. This card is an extremely splashable staple card, and while it can't be played in absolutely everything, for the decks that you can run it in, it is a huge boost to the consistency of those decks. Now, this card had quite a history of being expensive, with limited availability prior to Rarity Collection, where even its tin reprint was a solid $40. Now, however, the card is extremely accessible, but of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a safe card to invest in. Now, over in the OCG, Prosperity is actually limited to 1, and while that doesn't necessarily mean that it will get hit over here as well, usually a lot of trends will carry over between the two games. I've heard people call Pot of Prosperity the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment, and while that may be an exaggeration, I can certainly see why some people may think that. Now, the higher rarity versions are still worth quite a bit. The quarter century rares are between $40 and $45, and the collectors and ultimate rares are between $10 to $15 each. However, worth paying attention to are the Secrets, Ultras, and Supers, which are right now the cheapest that the player base has ever been able to access Prosperity for, with all three printings coming in between $4 and $6 each. This is pretty crazy, but I think the thing that's holding players back is fear of the card being limited. Of course, that makes this a tricky one. If it does get hit, the card will tank in price, but if it doesn't, then I could reasonably see all of these lower end printings going up to $10 each. At the same time though, with Prosperity being so accessible now, I don't see it getting reprinted for quite some time, so it really does actually have a lot of upward potential the longer and longer we go without the card being reprinted. For now, we'll just say that you should be wary of holding on to too many copies of this card in general, but if you're in for a bit of a gamble, try picking up a few of these at $3 to $4 each and seeing how the ban list plays out. Up next is, I guess, an interesting one. It is Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, but specifically here we're talking about the quarter century printing. So with Ghost Bell, Rarity Collection sets up two really big things to note. The first is that only Ash and Ghost Bell were reprinted in this Rarity Collection, so if there is a Rarity Collection 2 or 3, it tells us that we should be seeing some additional Ghost Girl sisters in that set, and that's really great because I'd love to have a set of all the Ghost Girls in matching high rarities. But at the same time, it could mean that this quarter century printing will go up more over time as the whole set of Ghost Girls becomes available. The other thing is that Ghost Bell was actually printed as a Starlight Rare back in Dimension Force, which wasn't too long ago. However, despite that, we get a very similar looking high rarity printing released in Rarity Collection here. I'm pretty sure that the owners of Starlight Rare Ghost Bells will be pretty upset about this. Basically, the exact same card is available for a much lower price now, and while some people will mind the set code and the quarter century stamp, a lot of people won't, and that's the reason for Ghost Bell dropping from $250 to $115 in the course of the past month. Now that said, recency bias has made a lot of cards relatively cheap from Rarity Collection, and there's a lot of opportunity to buy into these high rarity printings of cards from Rarity Collection that maybe people have overlooked. Quarter Century Ghost Bell had hit a low of $15, but people realized this is a staple hand trap card. It quickly rebounded back up to around $28 to $30, but now it has settled back a little bit more, down to just over the $20 mark. Keep an eye out for other cards from Rarity Collection like this. If you think there's a card that could be really useful within the game or could be useful but is really undervalued right now because it's not seeing play in the current format, see if it's at a low enough price to justify buying into a few additional copies. Moving on, let's look at Nader Servant. So I feel like what has happened with Nader Servant is something that could happen with any number of cards from Rarity Collection. Nader Servant is a searcher for the Dogmatica archetype, effectively letting you dump an extra deck monster to search your deck for a Dogmatica monster, and that dump can be really valuable, allowing you to dump cards like Garura or Entis to let you either draw or pop a card respectively. Nader Servant is honestly a card that hasn't seen much usage recently. The card was pretty underwhelming and a little bit too restrictive to see much play. However, in our last Market Watch, we did talk about Dogmatica Maximus and how a package consisting of 3 Nader Servant and 1 Maximus was being used by the Silent Force archetype over in the OCG, and that archetype just happens to look like a top tier strategy in the early parts of their format. That said, it probably should have been obvious that players paying attention to Maximus and the Silent Force archetype would also look to a high rarity printing of Nader Servant to try and buy it out, so we shouldn't be surprised to see the recent surge in the price of quarter-century Nader Servants. I think that early on, no one really cared about this card and it was only a $10 card or so, a price that's consistent with a lot of other good but not amazing quarter-century rares from the set. It has been a while since we've had a good ritual archetype in the game, so maybe pay attention to Nader Servants for the next little while. We could possibly see the quarter-century printings go up to $20, maybe $25. However, the other printing I'd want to pay attention to is the reprint secret rares, just because it would create a matching set with the secret rare Dogmatica Maximus, which is the highest rarity available for that card. You should still be able to grab the reprint secret rares for well under $1, and at that lower price point of buying in, they'd be a bit easier to try and flip and trade them for a little bit of a profit. Next up, I want to look at quarter-century secret rare Evenly Matched. So Evenly Matched is a card that has seen a lot of staple play ever since its release. Of course, there have been times where the card is good, and then sometimes it seems to be bad, and then it pops up again because of just how fundamentally impactful the card can be. So with Rarity Collection, I actually feel like Evenly Matched is really overlooked. With a lot of other cards that we see as chase cards in high rarity printings, they actually have other chase printings from other sets. We have Starlight Prosperity and Lightning Storm, and then we have Ulti Imperm and Droplets as well. The one thing that doesn't have that luxury is Ash Blossom, where prior to this set, we only had the original secret rare as the highest rarity, and that's a big part of why we naturally see QCR Ash and its other high rarity printings from Rarity Collection as such big chase cards. Evenly Matched is actually in exactly the same boat as Ash. It has the original secret rare printing, and then whatever other lower rarity reprints we've gotten, but it doesn't have any other chase printing. Now that being said, I feel like QCR Evenly is undervalued, and is actually worth looking at picking up. The further away we get from Rarity Collection, the harder the card is theoretically to find, and all of those players that are looking to max rarity their decks are going to need to pick up QCR Evenly Matched. Now obviously this card isn't the same value as like a QCR Ash, right? But I feel like the card should be something that moves up in price over time. The set is still so young. QCR Evenly is right at $40. It looked like it was going to go down to $30, but players picked up on that pretty early on. If you do have the chance to pick up some QCR Evenly Matched for anywhere between $30 and $35, I personally think that you should try to pick them up at that price because they do have a ton of upward potential. So if we're going to talk about some winners from the set, I think we also have to talk about how there are losers, and I think the biggest loser of all is definitely Pot of Desires. So of all the different high rarity printings in the game we've seen in the last couple of years, Pot of Desires had two really big ones. It has an ultimate rare printing from OTS Tournament Pack 11, and then it got a collector's rare printing as well as a rare printing back in Toon Chaos. Now, I remember Ulti Desires being quite an expensive card. I think that at one point it was like $80 to $90 or so. I was actually pretty happy with getting my set for around $200. Well now, however, getting some more high rarity printings of Pot of Desires has done nothing but tear down the prices of those existing versions. The OTS Tournament Pack Ultimate Rares are down between $20 and $25, while the Collector's Rares are between $30 and $40. The real slap in the face here is the original secret rares from Dark Illusion, which are all the way down to $5 each, which is still more than the Rarity Collection secret rares, but nothing compared to the $15 to $20 that they've been at for the last year or so. Honestly, anyone holding on to Pot of Desires from before probably feels pretty bad here. Even the rares from Toon Chaos, you used to be able to get like $1 or so for each of them. Those are worth nothing now that we have the extremely accessible, super, ultra, and secret rares at under $1 each. Now moving forward, I think we should be keeping an eye on the Altis, Platinums, CRs, and QCRs. Although I don't think they will ever hit the prices that the Altis and CRs from before were at, I definitely think that maybe we could double up from where their current values are, especially if the card does go from 2 to 3. However, definitely stay away from those older, higher rarity printings. While there is still technically a difference between the new and old CR printings, I would much rather pay $3 for the new CR rather than $40 for the old CR, and I think a lot of the player base would look at the two rarities the same way. So to wrap up, we have a couple of non-rarity collection cards just to touch on, and the first one here is Guiding Quem. So of course this card is something that's mainly seen as a piece of branded Despia decks, since it has interactions with Fallen of Albaz and other cards in your extra deck. Well, branded Despia hasn't been too hot recently, but it's actually another deck that has resulted in this card seeing some attention, and believe it or not, that deck is Bestial Runic. So basically you can use Quem to get other monsters to the graveyard, and Quem just happens to be a level 4 tuner that can be combined with a Bestial to make a level 10 Synchro like Baron, or used with Hugin to make a Tri-Edge Master or Coral Dragon and let you draw a card, kind of like what we saw out of Runic Naturia in the past. It's a pretty interesting engine, definitely not one I thought we'd see used this way, but for now it seems like a really interesting rogue or maybe like tier 2 type of strategy that combines some naturally really strong engines. Because of this, Guiding Quem is now up in price. It was at around $25 to $30, but now we've seen the price jump all the way up to between $40 and $45 per copy. Now to be fair, Quem is from Cyberstorm Access, and we aren't expecting to see that set reprinted until the 2024 Megatons, which should be in the latter half of the year, so that reprint is still like 7 to 8 months away. This is a pretty typical case of you needing to decide if you want to own the card now because you want to play it, or if you would rather sell it to capitalize on the fact that its price is at a relatively high point. I personally, if I did own this card, would be inclined to sell it while there is some hype behind it. And finally, the last card we're talking about for today is Cosmic Blazar Dragon. So this is a big level 12 synchro monster that requires its tuner and 2 non-tuners to be synchro monsters as well, so this card could be really difficult to bring out. However, as a level 12 synchro monster, this is actually a card that's being hyped up right now because it's a target that you can cheat out of your extra deck with Crimson Dragon. Of course, as we talked about on our previous Market Watch, Crimson Dragon is a card that's currently trending because of its viability in the Centurion deck, a new archetype coming out in Valiant Smashers that can make big synchro monsters fairly easily. Cosmic Blazar Dragon is a really annoying boss monster to have to deal with, as it can either negate a card or effect, negate a built-in summon, or negate an attack and end the battle phase. So having one of these on your side of the field definitely helps to control the tempo of the game. This card actually has just one holo printing as an ultra rare back from Duelist Saga. It was a weird little box set that honestly didn't have too many great reprints or new cards, but it had this pretty cool ultra rare foiling technology in it that really stands out from that set. The holo printing is going to cost you around $16 to $18 right now. Nothing too crazy, but still up from like the few dollars that this card has been for most of its lifetime because it just hasn't seen very much play. Aside from that version, there is still the common from Legendary Duelist Magical Hero that should be under $1 each right now if you just want to have a copy or two for yourself to play with. Alright guys, that is it for today. Nothing too crazy to go over immediately, but of course, as things do come up, we will talk about them. I do want to look ahead to what to expect next year, and of course, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Offseason in December and January is always a good time to pick up cards that no one's really looking at as well, while events are on a bit of a pause. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.